Dear everyone, this question as to how to pray God, or how to get our prayers answered, or how to ask God to fulfill our wishes, this for me is a very personal belief thing. See, prayer is more personal, more subtle, and inexpressible than even love. Love at least is expressible to some extent, but not prayer. Some glimpse of prayer you can feel it whenever you are in deep gratitude. But prayer is not about asking something, nor is it to keep repeating some holy chant, or it's not about reading a hymn or requesting a desire, nothing as such. In prayer, even a single word is too much. In fact, it is an act of utter wordlessness. Prayer happens in silence. It is a state of deep gratitude for life. If your words or your thoughts interfere in prayer, then the whole essence of prayer is lost. See, there is nobody like God or you as separate entity in prayer. Without any duality of God and you, if you can surrender yourself totally to the divine as one, then you enter into prayer. Total surrendering means surrendering all your wants, surrendering all your desires, surrendering even if it is good or bad, surrendering yourself wholesomely. Because we don't know what is right for us, so we have to learn to surrender, as whatever is destined by nature to us is always right. Like once a man was sailing in a ship, and suddenly, due to heavy tides, the ship collapsed, and the man somehow swam himself to a remote island. He was badly disappointed for his misfortune, and he pleaded God to somehow rescue him. He screamed around and shouted for help. But in spite of all his woes, nothing happened. He built a hut and he stayed there. After about some 10 days or so, as he was cooking, the fire sprang on the dry grass of his hut and the whole house caught fire. Now, this was even more devastating for him. He started crying aloud because what he had built with great difficulty, that too had reduced to ashes. He was so unable to withstand the catastrophe, so he collapsed weeping down on the ground. And by then he heard a small sound of a copter nearing the island, and he ran towards it screaming aloud. He started rejoicing on seeing some rescue team coming towards him. He curiously questioned them, "How did you people recognize that there was someone on this island?" And they said, "We came here because we saw some dark smoke fuming high up in the skies, and we thought someone might be there." See, God Himself lit the whole house and signaled the rescue team to come there. Even a tiny shelter catching fire in such a remote land is, of course, the worst thing to happen. But actually, what was thought as worst turned out to be the best. Similar incidences happen in our lives too. What we presume as bad time usually turns out to be good. And since we are unable to conclude what is good or what is bad for us, it's always best to surrender to the will of God. We need not ask for anything. By asking, we are only showing that we are more intelligent than God, as though God has to be taught as to what is to be given to us and what not to be given. The Creator is well aware of the needs of His creation. The earth doesn't plead the clouds to shower rains. When the earth is thirsty, the clouds know to pour themselves down. Like once it so happened that a renowned doctor was on his way to a medical conference which was held in a distant place. For that he was on aboard the flight. But just in a few minutes of takeoff, the flight crew announced an emergency in the plane, that the flight had to be landed in a nearby airport. And after safe landing, the doctor inquired for an immediate another next flight, but that was scheduled to take off only after 10 hours. And so the doctor thought that he may not reach the gathering well in time, and so he decided to hire a car and drive himself to the spot in time. But even on road he could not reach much far due to heavy thunderstorms. So he halted near a small village, and as he was extremely tired and hungry, he knocked at a nearby door. And from inside, a lady opened the door and welcomed him. She also provided him some food. The doctor was very thankful for her kind hospitality, but the doctor observed that the lady was quite gloomy and she was frequently running to the cradle to pacify her constant crying kid. "Any help?" asked the doctor. And the lady said that her son had a very rare kind of a cancer that could only be operated by a doctor named Stephen, a cancer specialist, and who stays quite very far away. She said that she didn't know how to go there, nor did she have the money for such a treatment. So she said that the only thing she knew was to pray God to somehow save her child. The doctor was surprised to hear all this. He said that her prayers have been answered, as he was the doctor the lady was talking about, that his name is Dr. Stephen, the cancer specialist. And this doctor treated the child and he also cured his cancer. Now, when we surrender both our pains and our pleasures to God, then God answers them in the right time. Our earnest prayers are always answered. But we only go wrong when we think God as only a bestower of our wants. And such a prayer of pleading for our desires is not at all a prayer. See, even Hiranyakashipu, the demon king, was praying God for an immortal life. And for that he performed great penance for many, many years and received a boon from Lord Brahma. Now, with such a boon as to remain virtually indestructible, he grew very arrogant. His ego strengthened to such extreme extents that he asked his own child Prahlad to chant only his name, and he strictly ordered not to chant the name of the Lord Hari. But since Prahlad disobeyed him, Hiranyakashipu tried in many ways to kill Prahlad. Though Prahlad was an ardent devotee of Lord Hari, he didn't request the Lord to save his life. Prahlad had surrendered himself totally to the Lord's will, and in spite of Hiranyakashipu's continuous attempts to kill Prahlad, still Prahlad was saved back to life. And in turn, it was because of Prahlad, Hiranyakashipu was brutally killed by Lord Narasimha. Prayer is not an act of pleading or begging. It's an act of invoking the divine within you. If you learn to surrender to the will of God, then it is true prayer. And thank you for listening now.